The Lions struggling a bit, haven't won since 2013. This new squad, how are you feeling? How do you fancy the chances?
I mean, first of all, the Lions struggling a bit. Special day selection. I think for fans, it's coming to realise how hard it is to win a Lions Test series. 2013 was the only time this century they've won a Test series. They've only ever won 5 in over 125 years of history. So, for players and fans alike to try and appreciate how difficult it is to win a Test series on tour. So, but when you look at those 38 names that have been selected today, of course, a very special day, Lions Selection Day. It brings out, certainly for former players who are lucky enough to wear this jersey, the nostalgia is running rife, right? I had goosebumps. I was nervous this morning. I've been retired for 3 years. To feel that nervousness, the names getting read out, resonating with that emotion that players are going through on Selection Day, one of the great traditions. Players signed out at the same time as the public, and what they did at the O2 today, to engage with the public, to engage with fans, is all important. We're here today at the Howder mural. They're graffitiing names on the wall up there behind me, and it brings back so many memories. And I'm super proud of the 38 players who've been named. They have the experience of a lifetime ahead of them.
Do you remember where you were when you got the call?
I do. I was a young man. I was 22. I can kind of feel what Henry Pollock's feeling today. Young man, hadn't been on the scene long. I was sat in my Rover 100 on Penarth Pier, P583 ULP, listening on my radio, 909-693, medium wave, Radio 5 Live, listening in my car. I didn't have Sky Sports at the time. I was a young student, I couldn't afford Sky Sports. And it's so special. You hear your name called out, and it was life-changing for me. It was career-defining, career-changing, life-changing tour, life-changing experience. And to this day, that's the best rugby trip I've ever been on. I've been on quite a few tours. Tours to South Africa. It was the last of the old school tours. It was before social media and camera phones really took off. And with a group of players that I'd grown up admiring and watching. For any young player who goes on tour, you spend your teenage years watching a lot of these players operate at their very best and inspiring you and motivating you, and to finally rub shoulders with those players at that level, at the pinnacle of rugby union in the British and Irish, British Isles and Ireland, will forever be one of the best moments of my life.
Do you have any particular memory or story that stands out from your time with the Lions?
Well, anything I can share with you. I remember vividly in 2009. We met at Pennyhill Park, and our training week preceding our flight to Johannesburg was at Pennyhill Park, and the training was tough. I remember we lost Jerry Flannery to injury that week. He'd been selected and got injured in the training week before we flew, and it was brutal. You kind of knew that statistics will tell you some players are going to miss out to injury, and we were meant to have this team bonding day down in Portsmouth on the Saturday morning early, and it was an early start. So after training Friday, it'd been a tough training week. All the lads retired to bed at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock after dinner, and I think Sir Ian McGeechan, who was coach of the Lions on that tour, got wind that not too many of the players were keen on this bonding day the following morning, and so he messaged all the lads at about 8 o'clock, and it's like, boys, tomorrow's cancelled, see you at the bar in 10 minutes. And we just, all went to the bar, we locked the doors. I won't tell you what happened, but it was just an amazing way to bring a group of lads together. I've no doubt that'll happen in a few months' time before they fly to Australia. And we shared beers, we shared a few songs, and it was a great way of bringing a group of rugby lads together, regardless of experience, age. You lock a load of lads in a room together and share some beers. It was always a special time, and so some wonderful memories of those tours. I've been through the emotions of losing a tour in a brutal way at Loftus in 2009. That last-minute Mornay-Stain kick, to then the elation of Sydney 4 years later, and so being able to experience the roller coaster, elicits every emotion in the Lions tour. You've got individual goals within the team goals. You're going through, the elation of selection, to the pain of injury, to the fear of them missing out in the big games, to watching your teammates win, watching your teammates lose, winning test matches, losing test matches. It brings out every emotion in you at the highest level of the sport. And that's why it's so special. You know, for these players, these 38 players who've been named today, I mean, I'm so excited for those guys to feel those emotions and feel what it's like, because it's unlike any other experience in rugby.
Yes, I know you mentioned injuries. There'll be a reserves list that are very excited or anticipating watching to see if anyone does get injured.
Yeah.
Do you think any names for tomorrow that have missed out and they'll have a chance to get in? And there's been some incredible stories over the years of reserves coming in and making
And no doubt it'll happen this time. You know, history will tell us that players will get injured if not in the next month, over the course of the tour, and so there will be players flying out. Look, it's hard to name the names that have missed out. A lot of chat around, you know, outside halves and second rows and back rows. Players have to miss out. This is the top end of the game. This is the pinnacle. You know, a lot of big names were always going to miss out. You can't squeeze 50 or 60 top international players into 38, and it has to be that way for it to be the pinnacle. So, you know, and equally there will be players bitterly disappointed today, as are the 38 who are going to be elated and celebrating tonight. That's the nature of the British Lions, and as I said, that's the way it has to be. But injuries will happen. Players will be in Australia who aren't named today, there's no doubt about that.
So obviously Toad's just been named captain.
Yep.
He's only been England captain for 4 months now. How do you think he'll get on as a relatively inexperienced captain? Obviously you've played with some huge names. How do you think he'll
Look, he's only been captain for a year for England, but he's been a world-class player for near enough a decade. And so that, you know, that inexperience as captain doesn't bother me one bit, and neither should it bother any player on that tour. This guy is a colossus of a rugby player. You look at his performance levels this year, the standards at which this guy is operating at the minute is supreme. He started the last 6 Lions Test matches. You know, he's an obvious choice of candidate as captain for me. You know, this is a guy who's going to lead by example. And you know, I think the players around him will see a rugby player that, as I said, has been operating at another level for near enough a decade. You know, a supreme rugby player, and you know, I've no doubt he'll do a fantastic job as a captain and leader of that group of men.
So obviously only 2 Welsh players' names. Wales going through a rough time rugby-wise, and that's fair to say at the moment.
Yep.
What do you think needs to be done to kind of help rugby get more Welsh players into the line squad?
Yeah, look, and it's I think first and foremost is with my Welsh hat on, let's celebrate those 2 players, Jack and Thomas. You know, wonderful day for them and their families, and I hope that this tour will give them the experience of a lifetime. Of course, we'd love there to be more Welsh players, but that's where we are at the minute. You know, I can remember the tours I went on, there were a handful, if that, of Scottish players, because that's where Scotland were at this point in time. You know, Wales haven't won a Six Nations match for a couple of years, and it's hard to disagree with the names upon that wall that have been selected. You look at the quality and the English, Irish, and Scottish representation in the squad. It's hard to disagree with it. So that's the way it is. That's where Wales are at the minute, and you know, I'd like to think, you know, we put the right things in place now. In 4 years' time, we will have more players on tour.
Do you think any names just missed out and maybe?
Yeah, of course. There's always players who are going to be unlucky, and you know, there's a lot of chat around the Welsh players who might not have made it. You know, Talupe Faletau was one after Doris's injury, whether he would have got a shot at a 4th tour. You know, he's shown some good form of late. You know, Dewi Late, David Jenkins, players who I'm sure, you know, I say I'm sure, I'm not in Andy Farrell's mind, but who might well be the next cabs off the rank if players do get injured. So, you know, players will feel, you know, that will feel disappointed today. And those names there will be potentially some of them, but as I said, you know, things happen, and stay fit, boys. Keep your phones on. You never know what might happen. But as I said, I'm here today with my British Lions hat on. I want to congratulate the 38 players that have been named, and certainly those 2 Welsh lads. You know, I'm super proud of them, and it would always be nicer to have more Welsh representation. But let's not detract from the quality of that 38-man squad. There's some proper rugby players there.
Do you have a message you send to Welsh players that have picked up the caps? Do you have any specific thing you want to say to them?
I'm sure the whole Welsh rugby is proud of them. Their families will be proud of them. Certainly their boyhood clubs will be proud of them. You know, where they would have taken their first steps in the game. For them, to tour with the British and Irish Lions is the pinnacle of what you can achieve in the game in the home unions, and today will be a very proud day for them. And from a personal note, I'm super proud of them, and no doubt their teammates, families, and the wider Welsh rugby public will be super proud of them as well. So congratulations to those two.
So what do you think kind of is the most shocking thing out of today? If you have to put it down to one.
Most shocking thing? God, it's hard. There's no real standout kind of shocking omissions or inclusions. I'm delighted to see Henry Pollock in there. There's a lot of chat around his inclusion, maybe, especially given how competitive the back row is. But I mean, dream stuff, right? This guy, young man, peak of his powers. I say peak. He's got a higher ceiling in him still. I think, wonderful player, and has shown supreme quality over the last season. His rise has been meteoric, and the enthusiasm of youth on a tour like that can never be underestimated. He's going to bring the energy, right, and I can't wait to see him hopefully excel.
So obviously you mentioned Pollock there. I'm assuming if you were to choose a starting 15, who would be in it? Who would be the rest?
I'm not sure starting Test 15. I think to look at Tom Curry, Jack Morgan, probably have something to say about that. But I think Andy Farrell's first message to the squad is, everyone's going to get an opportunity. That is the beauty of the Lions tour. Form comes and goes. Some players might perform, some players might. It's about sinking or swimming at that level. But Andy Farrell will be clear with these players. Everyone's going to get an opportunity in that first 5-6 games on tour. Everyone will get their opportunities to shine. And it's a tough place to be as a player. You've got this individual goal within the wider team goal of winning a Test series, but you also want to put your best foot forward. And it's how you do that as part of a team is a big challenge on the Lions tour for every individual. And you can't be selfish. It's about performing at your best and hoping that's good enough to make the Test side. So I'm so excited for those 38 players.
If you were in Farrell's shoes, could you choose 15 potentially, you think?
Look, some players are going to have credit in the bank. Even you're just looking at the back line. It's, Gibson Park has been on another level, but Mitchell has been brilliant. Hard to pick between those two. Thomas on his day, if he goes well, is going to make the Test 23. So that's hard. At 10, Finn Russell, I think, will be favourite to start at 10. I always thought, yeah, I know, and it's. Again, let's see how these guys operate on tour, in that environment, in that team, around those players. Some players, these tours bring out the best in players. Some struggle to adapt to a new team. So, these are the sort of characteristics that Andy and his coaching team would have been going through when they select the squad. Is, these not just playing attributes, but personal attributes. Players who can be part of the team and gel quickly. I always thought the midfield of Scotland and Ireland would dominate, and that's been the case. Tuipulotu, I'm delighted he's been included. Wonderful rugby player. He's obviously been injured a mix of Six Nations, but him and Hugh Jones, Gary Ringrose missed the last tour, didn't perform well, so missed it, but now he gets his chance. So he won't want to let this opportunity pass him by. Aki, supremely experienced as well. So it's bloody hard to pick out. Who's going to start amongst those guys? Even the back three, I won't even go there. Hard to pick a starting 15. Yeah.
So obviously it seems that Farrell hasn't necessarily picked an experience more seems to favour form than Pollock. The big name that has been mentioned that he's missed out is Farrell.
Yeah.
Do you think that was the right choice? Do you think obviously he's been playing out of France, not necessarily had the easiest run? Do you think he was right to leave him out?
Don't be surprised if he's not there come the end of the tour. Owen Farrell, he's a test match animal. He's a supremely gifted rugby player. Warrior who's been there and done it at the top level for club and country. So, if he does need to call on experience, if there is an injury in the squad, there's no doubt he'll be in the conversation as a guy come the end of the Test series. If there are some big games to be won or lost, it's hard to look past him. I know he's got the experience of Johnny Sexton to lean on in a coaching capacity, but in a playing capacity, don't be surprised to see Owen there come the end of the trip. But look, that's Andy's decision, his selections he's made. Let's celebrate the lads who have been picked. Marcus, Finn, and the two Finns. All brilliant rugby players. I can't wait to see them thrive down under.